Shabbat Shalom. This is Shabbat Behar B'chuchtai. And we have obviously two parashot that we're reading this week. Behar means on the mountain, from which, of course, the commandments and instructions were given by God to our people through Moshe Rabbeinu. God often uses the images of mountains to describe the high moments of success in life and also the obstacles that stand in our way. In Matthew 17, we read these words from Rav Yeshua. For truly I say to you, if you have emunah, faith, as a grain of mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, move from here to there, and it will move, and nothing will be impossible for you. In Vayikra 25:10, just a bit further along from our reading today, are these words, proclaim liberty throughout all the land unto all the inhabitants. They are inscribed on the American Liberty Bell in Philadelphia, and have been repeated as a message of hope for the oppressed peoples of the world. Of course, we know that they were intended particularly in relation to the year of Jubilee. We know also that cultures and nations have understood freedom in different ways. In the UK, freedom today has been seen as a permit for nearly uninhibited expression of personal opinion, but also the right to practice one's religions and politics and worldview unchallenged, at least in theory. The Rambam, Maimonides, born in 1138 in Cordoba, Spain, who died in 1204 in Egypt, believed that true freedom meant the ability to live where one chose, a freedom that most Jews, including himself, did not enjoy in his lifetime. Our second reading from Parsha Bechuchtai concludes Sefer Vayikra. This is the central book of the Torah, which details commands of holiness and enjoins our people to become a nation of Kohanim, a holy people. Bechuchtai means by my commandments. From chapter 26, verse 3, if you walk by my statutes and keep my commandments. These commandments relate to every aspect of our lives. Specific to this parashat are commandments relating to ritual purity and impurity and to sexual ethics. That includes as well a magnificent summation of Torah itself. This is the Holiness Code, which gives Vayikra its abiding values and depth for all time and all people. It is upon the basis of this code that directives to new converts were given by Rav Yaakov and the Jerusalem Council, as you will see in Acts 21. But today we're going to review the first command given to humanity. This commandment has been confirmed throughout the scriptures, and it is Hashem's command to us concerning Shabbat. Shabbat is first among holy days. It was given by God even before Torah was presented to Israel. At the conclusion of creation, just after the creation of human beings, God rested, establishing the principle of Shabbat rest. We are told that he especially blessed the seventh day. In fact, Shabbat was the first day in the life of the first human being. The rabbis say that God created man after everything else had been done, so that at no time could human beings say they aided God in his work. Shabbat is sanctified in the Torah and throughout the scriptures. We read in Shemot 20, "Remember the Shabbat," literally the seventh day, "by keeping it holy. 6 days you shall labor and do all your work. But the seventh day is the Shabbat of the Lord your God. In it you shall do no work. You, your son, your daughter, your male or female servant, your cattle, your sojourner who stays with you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens and the earth, the sea, and all that is within them, and he rested on the seventh day. Therefore the Lord blessed the Shabbat day and made it holy." God set this day apart to be kept holy in his honor. Shabbat is also declared to be a sign of the eternal covenant between God and Israel. No work is done on this day because it is God's Shabbat. The root of this word, Shabbat, means to cease or desist. No one in the household is to work, including family members, servants, animals, and strangers, those in the process of becoming part of Israel. God set the example of resting on the seventh day, and he commanded his people to follow this example. The scriptures have a great deal more to say about Shabbat than we read here. Shabbat is to be a delight, a joyous time to honor God and to demonstrate obedience to him and his commandments, as we read in Yeshayahu 58. Separation is commanded between the sacred and the secular, between 6 days of work and the seventh day of rest. Candle lighting and Kiddush on Friday evening help us to separate Shabbat from the week that is passing. And Havdalah, a traditional ceremony that closes Shabbat, encourages us to separate Shabbat from the new week that is beginning. A special blessing is given to God for sojourners. This is the traditional English word for those from among the nations who came to worship the God of Israel and enter into covenant relationship with him. Those who keep Shabbat and follow God's commandments, according to Yeshayahu 56, verses 6 through 8, are converts to Judaism, living as Jews, worshiping as Jews, becoming Jews. Thus, those who were not born Jews but choose to follow the God of Israel and keep his commandments are especially blessed by God. This statement is meant to be an encouragement to those who are not Jews by birth to enter into the covenant relationship with the God of Israel, as many did in the first century, and many more have done since then. Many warnings are given concerning for failure to keep Shabbat. One specifically is given in Nehemiah 13. And we know that the first exile was a direct consequence of Israel's failure to keep the Shabbat. When Rav Yeshua, in speaking to the Proshim, declared the Shabbat was made for humans, not humans for the Shabbat, so the Son of Man is Lord even of the Shabbat, he was not suggesting that Shabbat was no longer an imperative, but was rejecting the man-created legalities which made Shabbat difficult and a burden to keep. Extrapolated from the traditions of Yeshua's day, modern Orthodox Judaism has 39 prohibited tasks on Shabbat. Here they are: carrying, burning, extinguishing, finishing, writing, erasing, cooking, washing, sewing, tearing, knotting, untying, shaping, plowing, planting, reaping, harvesting, threshing, winnowing, selecting, sifting, kneading, combing, spinning, dyeing, chain stitching, warping, weaving, unraveling, building, demolishing, trapping, shearing, slaughtering, skinning, tanning, smoothing, and marking. We read in Ivritim 4:11, there remains a Shabbat rest for the people of God. For anyone who enters God's rest also rests from his own work, just as God did from his. This statement, far from making Shabbat irrelevant, encourages followers of Yeshua to remember God's Shabbat as the basis of an understanding of our relationship with him. Here is Rav Yeshua's own example, which we are commanded to follow. Yeshua returned to the Galil in the power of the Ruach, and reports about him spread throughout the countryside. He taught in their synagogues, and everyone respected him. Now when he went to Nazareth, where he'd been brought up, on Shabbat, he went to the synagogue as usual. He stood up to read, and he was given the scroll of the prophet Yeshayahu. We have many traditional injunctions concerning Shabbat. From Rashi's commentary, here are some practical directives for keeping Shabbat, and listen to them carefully. Take care always to remember the Shabbat day. What does he mean? There shall be a remembering of a Sabbath day. Think of Shabbat throughout the week and prepare for it. In other words, anticipate it. Think about it at all times, not just the moment before. Provide for the Shabbat all that is necessary in advance. Think about what you need to make Shabbat a blessing and purchase or prepare it in advance. 6 days you shall labor, and then you shall have done all your work. When Shabbat comes, it should be in your eyes as though all your work was done, even if work still exists. But it should be as if the work does not even exist. On Shabbat, one should not even think about work, much less plan or discuss it. The sages have said the laws of Shabbos are like mountains hanging by a hairbreadth. The Torah discusses it but briefly, yet its laws are numerous, and the punishment for those who desecrate it is severe. Many of these commands, of course, were created by the rabbis as what they considered to be a ring around the Torah. And it was of these that Rav Yeshua spoke to the Proshim. However, God does speak to us strongly about Shabbat, and he expects us to understand that what he means is clear without having further laws. We should take him at his word, rather than requiring further very specific directives and instructions in order to keep Shabbat safe from encroachment. Some traditions surrounding Shabbat help us to make this day special, beginning at sundown on Friday and ending at sundown on Saturday. It is traditional to plan a family Shabbat meal, making all the necessary preparations well in advance, preparing the home, lighting the candles at sunset. The ceremony of Kiddush is not only a time to give thanks to God, but also to show appreciation to those who've provided the meal. Wine is used because it is symbolic of joy and gladness, celebration and rejoicing. 2 loaves of challah are traditionally used, and they are a reminder of the double portion of manna collected every Friday morning in the wilderness. A special blessing is said over children, one for boys, one for girls, and the Mishlei 31 blessing is said over the wife or mother. And there should also be a special blessing, I believe, over the husband or father. It is traditional to sing special songs around the table, songs like Lecha Dodi, I Am My Beloved's, from Shir HaShirim, referring to God and Israel, and Shalom Aleichem. There are many verses to this song, but here are just a few. Peace be to you, O ministering angels, messengers of the Most High, the Supreme King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He. Enter in peace, O messengers of peace. Bless me with peace, O messengers of peace. Depart in peace, O messengers of peace. Havdalah is another Shabbat tradition, which helps to separate the sacred from the secular, using these elements to remember the sweetness of Shabbat throughout the week. Wine, again, is symbolic of joy in the Lord. In Tehillim 23, we read, My cup runs over. We read or sing, Behold, God is my salvation. I will trust and will not be afraid, for the Lord my God is my strength and song, and he has become my salvation. Therefore you will joyously draw water from the springs of salvation. From Yeshayahu 12. Fragrant spices, besamim, remind us of the sweetness and the fragrance of Shabbat. The candle with multiple wicks and strands may represent to us all of those in the family or community or all of Israel. And as we look upon the flame and hold our hands up to it, we are reminded that our God is a consuming fire. Shabbat is a day of rest for us. It is a day set apart from all others, an oasis or an island in time and space. We celebrate God's creation, His blessing, His mercy, and His love. But we also honor God and worship Him when we come together with those of like mind. Shabbat is a reminder of our unique calling by God, which requires that we pursue separation from the world even as we work and live in it. As a day of rest, Shabbat is also a reminder from God that we require physical rest. God knows us. He knows us better than we know ourselves. And He originated the idea when nothing like it existed anywhere in the world. And of course, without His indication, we probably wouldn't have days of rest even today. In fact, Jews were often called in the ancient world and even in medieval times lazy by pagans because they took a whole day off for Shabbat. Shabbat is a time of spiritual refreshment, not just ceasing from work, but a time to be rejuvenated when we fix our eyes on that which is of the spirit rather than of the physical. And each Shabbat, we are also reminded of our rest in Mashiach Yeshua, a rest provided, like Shabbat, by God Himself. How does one make Shabbat a delight and a blessing? Well, we have this repeated again in Mark 2:24, 27 and 28. Shabbat was made for humankind and not humankind for Shabbat. So begin by allowing each day of the week to remind you of the coming of Shabbat. Mark the days off the calendar. Each new day begins at sundown in restful darkness. As the sun sets, think of the coming Shabbat and how you will celebrate it. Nighttime is the time of preparation for the gift of light and activity. God and nature go on without us, and we join His work in the morning. Make preparations for Shabbat. Each one of us and each household should get into the rhythm of Shabbat, beginning on Friday morning. Even on Thursday, begin to think about what needs to be done and provide yourself with a plan for taking care of everything in good time. Prepare the atmosphere for Shabbat by returning home from work or school or other activities, ready to let go of the week and separate yourself from it and from your usual work. Welcome the Shabbat. Distinctive sights and smells should remind us that this is Shabbat. As we light the Shabbat candles, make Kiddush, say the Hamotzi over fresh challah, we welcome the shalom of God into our homes and into ourselves. Plan your time from sundown on Friday to sundown on Saturday so that you do not have to take part in anything that might remind you of work. Anticipate our Shabbat service by preparing your heart and your mind for joyful worship and praise, for giving thanks to God for His goodness, and by equipping yourself to hear and receive from the Scriptures. Read the Parashah. Read all of the readings for the week. And then celebrate Shabbat. Take delight in the natural world, in all of God's creation, in the presence of friends and family, and a community that shares in your love for Shabbat. Plan activities that are different from what you do on all the other days. Don't allow the marketplace to govern your life on this day. Shabbat does not do away with sadness and sorrow, writes Pinchas Pele in the Jewish Sabbath. It merely requires that all sadness be tabled for one day so that we may not forget that there is also joy and happiness in the world, and acquire a more balanced and hopeful picture of life. The Sabbath, by its very being, comforts and heals. Consider what rest really means to you. Are you able to stop all activity for even a few minutes without beginning to feel tense and think about what you should be doing? Rest from commerce, from business. Note that the root of this word is the same for the word busy. Rest from busyness. Rest from worry and from whatever activities summon worry or anger. Paying bills, making to-do lists for the coming week, thinking of things or people who upset or irritate you. Rest from work. Whatever that word means to you personally, abstain from it for the hours of Shabbat. As we sanctify the Shabbat, we should be reminded that Yeshua came to bring His people true rest. This shalom is beyond human understanding. The world around us cannot give it, try as it might, and it cannot take such shalom away from us. So, today, on this Shabbat and future Shabbats, celebrate Shabbat. Make it the best day of the week, every week. Shabbat Shalom.